So today's daf is Pepe's, and we're up to the Mishnah. Lo yilmad odom ravok sofrim. Ravok is a person who's not married, and lo yilmad means he shouldn't be teaching sofrim. And there are two interpretations of the word sofrim. Either sofrim means children, and the reason why we don't want him, if he's single, to teach children is because the mothers of the children will be visiting, maybe there'll be PTA meetings, and he might be alone with married women. So that's something that should be avoided. Tosa says that the word ravak means bachur, and he quotes a pasuk in Yeshaya to prove this. In any event, it seems that the word ravak here refers to someone who is never married. And we'll talk about someone who's married but whose wife is not available. She's out of town in just a minute. Now, it seems that the word instead of yilmad should be yilamed, which would be the same four letters, just a different nikud, different nikudos. So sofrim, according to Rashi, means tinokos. Tosa says that the word sofrim means talmidim in general, which would probably mean that even if they're a little bit more mature, these youngsters, nevertheless, there still is a chash of the mothers coming around. Now, what about the flip side, a woman teaching children? Velo tilmad or tilamed isha sofrim. She should not be teaching the young children. And once again, it would seem that the chashash is that the men, in this case, might come around. Rabbi Eliezer goes a step further. Af misha ein lo isha lo yilmad sofrim, lo yilamed sofrim. Now, ein lo isha, as we'll see in the Gemara, is going to mean that he's married, but his wife is not around. Rabbi Yehuda omer lo yira ravak behema. Rabbi Yehuda is choshesh for the avera of sodomy, of having a relationship with an animal. And v'lo yishnu shnei ravakim b'talis achas. And two men who are not married should not be sleeping together under one cover. The word talis literally means a beged, but in a case where he's naked, then the talis here means like a cover. And this is the chash, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you'll see the Chacham rejected, of Mishkav Zocha. Chachamim, they disagree with Rabbi Yehuda. Matir, they allow a ravak to, take care of the flocks, to shepherd the flocks. And they allow two ravakim to sleep under one talis. We're not choshesh for Mishkav Zocha, Mishkav Behem. The Gemara asks my timer, why is it that a unmarried person should not be teaching children? If we'll say mishum yinuke, if it's because we're afraid of, I guess in contemporary language you call it a pedophile, meaning that he might have a mishkav zachar with one of the children that he teaches, and that would l'chora reflect the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, but here we're talking about the shita of the Chachamim. Vatanya Amar lo Rabbi Yehuda, the Chacham rejected Rabbi Yehuda, and lo nechshedu Yisrael mishkav zach, v'lo nechshedu al mishkav behema. So it cannot be that the reason for opposing an unmarried man to teach children is because of mishkav zachar. Ella ravak, the reason why we don't want an unmarried man to teach tinokas mishum im hasa diyanuke, because the mothers of the children come around, and we have a chash that maybe the ravak will have a temptation to want to let's say have relationship with one of the mothers. Isha. Now the flip side, a woman should not be teaching tinokos, mishum avasa diyanuke, because the fathers of the children, they will very often bring their children to the Beis Sefer, and there'll be a mixture between this teacher and the parent, the male parent. Now, la halacha, I think the poskim today, I don't have access to it right now, are a little bit more mekil. Perhaps because we need teachers, and we don't have enough of a supply of them, and we're more likely to hire a single man or a single woman to teach children. But strictly speaking, according to the Mishnah, it's prohibited. The Mishnah now quotes Rabbi Elazar, Af Misha Einlo, even if he doesn't have a wife. What does that mean? Iboilu. Misha Einlo Isha Klal. It means he had a woman that he was married to in the past, otherwise it would be a repetition of Ravak, but she died. O Dilma, perhaps no. That what Rabbi Elazar has in mind is Eina Shruya Etzel. But Eina Shruya Etzel means that he's married right now, but Rabbi Elazar is worried about a scenario in which his wife is far away. So she's not currently living with him in the house because she's in Medina Sayyam or wherever she is. And the Tanakama would be matir that because he has a wife. On the other hand, Rabbi Elazar says if his wife is not available, either she won't protect him or prevent him from doing this Ma'aseh Avera, or perhaps in the absence of his wife, he has a desire. But according to the second shot, which the Gemara is going to now establish, it means that Tanakama, in a case of a man who was once married but his wife is gone, would again prohibit this man from teaching the Tinokos. The machlokas between Rabbi Elazar and the Chacham, therefore, is in a case where his wife is alive but not available. Toshma, we learned in the Brisa, Af Misha Yeshlo, he does have a wife, but V'ena Shruya Etzel lo Yulamed Sofrit. So we're going to assume that this is the Shita of Rabbi Elazar, and that's what he meant in our Mishnah. Af Misha Ein Lo Isha means that she's not Shruya Etzlo, she's not with him. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Lo Yireh, a Ravak should not be a shepherd, and two Ravakim should not be sleeping under one talus. Tanya Omer Lo Rabbi Yehuda, Lo Nechshedu Yisrael al Mishkav Zachor, Lo Nechshedu Yisrael al Shchivas Behim. And this leads us to the Mishnah here, the second Mishnah of the Amud here, Pei Beis Amud Aleph. Kol sha'asaka v'imanoshim, women who are constantly buying, let's say, cosmetics from him, and therefore he's always exposed for the purpose of his livelihood to women, and they need him, and he supplies them with whatever he supplies. Lo yisiachid v'anoshim. Even if there are many women, then we classify this as libo gaspahen. And we said yesterday that libo gaspahen is rugil. He has an ongoing relationship with them. In this case, they are his clients. So he's got a client-employer relationship. And therefore, we have more of a chash that, even if there are many women, he's not inhibited, and one woman would not, tattletale on another woman. And a father who's responsible to see to it that his son has a trade, he should avoid those trades that deal constantly with women. Like, as we said before, selling cosmetics. Rabbi Meir Omer, Li olam yelamed adam espino umnus nikia v'kala. We prefer that the umnus that he teaches his son have two qualities. Number one, it's nikia. And nikia probably means that there are certain professions that you're always involved in money and there's a lot of swindling going on. And therefore, by the nature of the profession, there's a strong temptation to steal. Kala would mean work that's relatively light work. There's other physical labor that is very, very taxing, and it will deplete him of his energy, and he won't be able to study Torah the way he should and other mitzvahs. But now it could be that those umnus or umnios that Rabbi Meir discourages are very lucrative. So therefore, Rabbi Meir adds the following: all of wealth is something that comes from a blessing from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And even if this umnus nikia v'kala is not very lucrative, it doesn't have a very high salary, but nevertheless, he should pray to Hashem that Hashem will provide him with all his needs. Every single umnus in the world, like you can say, well, I'll invest in real estate. And I know it's a great investment, and I'm going to make a bomb of money on it. I'm going to buy a company and refurbish it, and so forth and so on. But within that umnus, there's going to be aniyus. No one is guaranteed 100% that he's going to make a killing. And therefore, it all depends upon the Ribono Shel Olam. Shelo aniyus min ha'umnus v'lo ashirus min ha'umnus ala kol lefi zchuso. What will decide and determine his income is not the umnus that he chooses. So you can say, well, I'm going to go to medical school or law school, or take a course in architecture and so forth with the high-paying jobs, and I'm going to make a great deal of money. No. Everything depends on the schus that he has klapi shmaya, and therefore the best thing is to choose an umnus nikia and kala, even if it doesn't seem to be something that has a great income, and be mispala. So this is really a reflection of the midah of bitachon. Rav Shimon ben Elazar Omer Ra'isa miyamecha chayav v'yov sheyesh lahem umnus uvehein mispardesim shelo b'tzar. It's an amazing phenomenon. Look at the animal world. It seems that they always have enough food for themselves to sustain themselves. We don't see animals dying of starvation. And did you ever see a chaya, a beast, or an oaf, a bird that was a doctor, a lawyer, or a real estate person? They don't have umnios. They just live their natural lives, and yet Hashem provides for them. Falolo nivru el shamshedi. And Reb Shimon ben Elazar claims that the purpose for which these animals and birds were created is to serve man. And with the Kal V'chomer, ani nivreisi l'shamish koni, I was created to serve my master, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Eino din, how much more so shas parnes shelo b'tzar. If God provides for the animals, how much more so he should provide for us, because we are serving him. So why is it that we are sweating it out and we're having such a challenging, such a challenge to bring in the funds? Ella, the answer is horati masai v'kipachti es parnasosi. It's only because of my failings in serving Hashem, my maisim roim. That's why Hashem cut down my parnasa, and I need to be mitztayer and be plagued with tension and pressure and nervous tension to make a living. Abagurion ish tzaidan omer mishum abagurion. Lo yelamed adam espino. The following enumerated list of umniyas should be avoided. And this is going to be the opinion of Abagurion. We'll soon see that the Chachamim had a different opinion. First on the list is a chamar. A chamar is someone who drives a donkey and carries different weights on the donkey. A gamal is someone who is trained to work with camels. Kadar is someone who creates pottery. Sapan is a captain of a ship. Roa, of course, is a shepherd. Chenvani are those who are involved in selling and buying merchandise. What is to be avoided in all the above? How many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. She'umnasan umanus listen. In other words, these are trades or occupations that have a measure of dishonesty. And listim are shodedim, the people who attack you. And apparently, these professions that are listed here are people who start collecting from the fields around them, whether it's eitzim or peros. Sometimes they hire themselves out and they violate some of the conditions of the agreement, or a shepherd, for example, might be tempted to take his flock into somebody else's pasture area. Chenvani will very often mix in water to the wine to water down the wine and get a better price. Or he puts in little pebbles in the chitim so that when they weigh it, it weighs more. All of these umnias involve a great temptation to be guilty of dishonesty, some measure of dishonesty. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. The Omer Bishmo, he had a different tradition in the name of Abba Guria. Hachamorim Ruben Rishon. Okay, fine. You're right that Chamorim very often are guilty of stealing. But Gmalim, those whose umnis is with camels, Ruben Ksherim, most of them are out there in the midbarios, and it's a makom sakana, and therefore they're always praying to Hashem. They are Yeram l'nafsham u'meshabrim libum l'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore it's not such a bad idea to teach your son and raise him to be a gamal. Hasafadim, once again, they too are constantly exposed to danger. They're out there in the high seas. And Ruban Chasidim. Yeah, I'm reminded of the story of Yonah. And they believed in God. And they're in such a dangerous situation that their hearts are sort of broken in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So they're always mispalel, and that's a good idea. I'm thinking in our situation today, maybe Chayalim who in the past would not daven are now davening. There's no atheist in a foxhole. Now we get to a Gemara that has a Mishnah that has 3 words to it. In Breslov, this 3-word Mishnah that we're about to learn is so fundamental. Tov sheberofim leganim. If we're talking about professions that require a person to constantly pray to Hashem for protection and salvation, then in the case of the Rofim, we're going to find the exact opposite. People and the Rofi himself, they rely totally on the medical implementation and the refuah, and therefore they don't have that need of shviras leiv lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore sofam sheyirshu gehenna. So amongst the Breslov Hasidim, I can tell you from people I know that they're very hesitant about going to doctors. Certain inherent distrust, sort of. I mean, again, if they have to go to a doctor, they'll go. I'm not saying no. Now, here the Mesifta, he adds another point here. Not only are they, so cocksure of themselves that they don't pray to Hashem, but also they take the lives of other people, of their patients, into their own hands. And pa'amim horeg nefashos, because if his refuah is not absolutely scientifically proven, they're playing with lives, and very often they're responsible for the death of a patient. And he adds that very often a patient desperately needs the help of a doctor. The physician says, well, it's going to cost you for this surgery 25 grand or whatever it is. That's probably cheap today in today's market. And if you don't pay, then go fly a kite. And you could drop dead for all I care, because I'm here to make a buck. So this is the Rofim. The problem here with this Mishnah is the word Tov. Tov Shebarofim seems to indicate that we're talking about the best of the Rofim. So one way of interpreting this is that even the best of the Rofim are guilty of being so sure of themselves that they're not Shover Libam, and the best of the Rofim will take chances with the lives of their patients, even the best. However, Rabbi Kiva Eger, in his Tosefes on the Mishnayos, says, if you're talking about these midos of, gaiva, or the lack of tefillah, or maybe even putting people's lives in danger, those are bad midos. You wouldn't call that tov shebarofim, and therefore he interprets it that the midah tova shebarofim that the Mishnah is alluding to is the midah of achzorios, because if you're a Rahman, you're not going to be able to be a surgeon and cut into someone's flesh. And because this midah rachmanus, if you're a Rahman, then you won't be able to notify the patient that he's close to the end. And the tov shebarofim are those who use the midah achzorius, and they're willing to cut in to the flesh of their patients and surgery without any inhibition, or to notify their patients how serious their situation is. Im yishtavish ba'odam acher she'eno rofe tivi'enu midah zula gehenna. So if I understand Rabbi Kivega correctly, and again, there are a whole bunch of other interpretations of this Mishnah, Rabbi Kivega is implying that the word Tov Shebarofim should not be limited specifically to Rofim, but it means anyone who uses the Midah Tova of the Rofe, the necessary attribute of the Rofe, which means Achsorios, then if, let's say, he's not a Rofe, then it's misplaced Achsorios, and therefore Sofol again. Whole different shot. Then we get to Tabochim. And the Mishnah says, HaKosher Sheba Tabochim. In other words, he's the most experienced and competent butcher, or, shochet. Shutafo Shel Amalek. He's like a partner to Amalek. Why? Because Amalek tries to be machshil the Jewish people, right? He looks for the nechsholim bader. And so too, in the case of Tabochim, they come to situations where a behemoth is a suffix treifa. They don't want to suffer the financial loss. They want to sell it because that's how the butcher makes his money. And in order to prevent himself from losing money, he's going to be machil treifos. And I think I may have mentioned to you that my father, Zichron Livrocha, in his first position was in a city called Bangor, Maine. And he was a very young man. He got a smicha at the age of 22. I think the salary then was like $35 a week or something, but that was considered a very good salary. And he had trouble in Bangor, Maine with shochtim. There's a lot of meat was coming through Bangor, Maine. And he discovered 2 shochtim that were being machil, treifus, and nevelis. He tried to run them out of town. He tried to fight them. He was a young man, and they were too powerful for him. And on Leil Kol Nidre, after 2 years in that Rabbanus, he got up from the podium. He said, either they leave Bangor or I leave Bangor. And at the end, he had to leave Bangor. Rabbi Nahoroi Omer, some say that Rabbi Nahoroi is Rabbi Meir, because Nahoroi is Miloshen Meir. Meiniach ani is kol umnus sheyesh ba'olam v'eini melamed espini el Torah. Torah. I'm going to give up all the umnus in the world just to teach Torah to my children. Sha'adam ochel bischar ba'olam hazeh v'akeren kayemes olam haba shar kol umnus eino kain. Every other profession goes up and down, and if it requires physical exertion when a person gets older, it's very difficult for him to earn his salary. He's a zaken. But not so in the case of Torah. Hashem will guarantee both in this world and certainly in the next world that he will be rewarded. So I guess they didn't have Social Security and other kinds of insurance for situations where you're unemployed, unemployment insurance. It's Areu Meis Barav. He's going to die of hunger. Aval Torah Enokim. Elameshamarto Mikol Ra Binaruso. It will help prevent him in his youth from any kind of averus and chatoim. And even in his zikna, or when he has yisurim, v'noseneslo achris v'tikva v'ziknuso, and he'll be able to eat some of the keren of the schar, the basic schar, in this world. And now the Mishnah is going to go on and prove this from a pasuk in Yeshaya. Now, this concept of Torah Mishamarto, is fundamental in a sugya Bava Basra. We're about to start in Ezekiel, and in Bava Basra, the Gemara talks about Talmidei Chachamim. Do they have to participate in the collection of monies, of funds, for the building around of a choma, of a protective security fence, a wall around the city? And the Gemara says that Talmidei Chachamim lo boy nitirusa. They don't need protection, therefore they don't need the choma, and they don't have to chip in for the choma. Again, another idea that's very, very close to Breslev, or to pure midas habitachon in the Bali Musar sense, that they can rely on their Torah to protect them. But certainly, what's unique about Torah, even more so than any other mitzvah, is that it protects a person. And now the Mishnah quotes a pasuk in Yeshaya. B'naruso ma'o omer. What does it say about a young person? V'koyei Hashem yachlifu koach, etc. So in other words, they have this tosefes koach. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to guarantee that during their youth they have this extra koach because they're dedicating themselves to the study of Torah. And now we quote a famous pasuk in Tehillim Tzadi Beis, and Seva, of course, is Zikna. And even in Zikna, when he cannot study Torah the way he'd like to, he doesn't have the energy force to do so, but nevertheless, od yoniv perot, and that means he'll eat from the schar of all the years of his limud Torah that he learned and studied in his youth. V'cheinu Omer. Also, we have a pasuk by Avraham Avinu. Avraham zakein ba bayamim Hashem bereach es Avraham bakol, which we'll read in Mitzvah this Shabbos, and it means that Avraham was blessed that even in his zikna, because he was osek b'Torah, God will bless him bakol. Now, when it says that Avraham Avinu was osek b'Torah, this is based on a drasha in Masechet Yomi. It says Avraham zaken v'yoshev v'yeshiva haya. That Avraham Avinu was Yoshev means he was Yoshev v'yeshiva, he was learning Torah. And Avraham Avinu was Makayim the entire Torah as the other Avos before it was given. Matzinu sha'os Avraham Avinu's called Torah kulad shelo nitna shenemar. Also, I believe in this week's parsha, Ekev asher shama Avram b'koli v'yishmar mishmarti mitzvosai v'chukosai v'torosai. So it means that Avram was Makayim all the mitzvahs Hashem. How did he know about the mitzvahs? He didn't have the Torah. So it's possible that there was a yeshiva, Shem Ve'ever. We're not sure if Avram was part of that yeshiva, probably was. Alternatively, the Chazal say in the Medrash that the two kloyos, the kidneys of Avram, became like two rabbanim to teach him Torah. And now we get to the Gemara. Torah rabbanim kol sha'asaka b'noshim suro ra. He has a minhag ra. In other words, he's mischaber with noshim, and therefore we should stay away from such a person because he's going to be leading a loose moral life, and you don't want to rub shoulders with such a person. Kegonat sarfim, vasarikim, vanokoros. So who are these people whose profession brings them into constant interaction with women? Number one, sarfim, right? Women come to a tzaref, they order a pair of earrings or a ring, something made out of gold or another precious metal. Sarikin are those who comb the flax in order to give the women flax to use to manufacture begodim. Nekoros are those, the women used to use these very small kind of portable mills, M-I-L-L, and they very often had to be cleaned out. That's the Nakoros. Rochlin are those who sell cosmetics to women. Hagardiim are those who weave garments for women. Women come into the Gardi and they order custom-made garments. Hasaporim, okay, we said that these are the teachers, and the women bring their children to the teacher. Hakovsim, those who are in laundry, so the women bring their dirty laundry to the koves to clean. Hagora, Gora is to make his dam, because women need hakozes dam even more than men, especially during pregnancy, according to the Talmudic medicine in any event. Ve'abalon, those who would heat up the merchetzos, and the women would come to the Beis HaMerchatz. Bursaki, those are the tanners. Ma'abed oros and labushe min ole nashim. Women would order leather garments or leather shoes. Ein ma'midim mehem lo melech v'lo kohen gadol. My timer, shalom mishum depsile. It's not that technically they are psulim. Any of these occupations will disqualify someone as if he was apostle. Ela mishum dezil umnesayu. It's what we call a low-grade kind of umnus, eino mechubedus. And we have a law that applies to a melech called shetehei a maso olech. And the people are mezalzel in these kind of professions, and therefore he is not going to be worthy of that ema that the Jewish people have to give to the milk. Gora, again, as we said earlier, is a make his dam. And it seems that those who are in charge of hakozes dam, well, like the physicians that are on the top of the echelon and are very much in demand, and it goes to their head, wow, everyone's calling me, everyone's arranging a time, an appointment with me. So he's mahalech al tzido. He walks like vertical, like a balgaiva. Verucho gasa. He has a gasus ruach. He's a balgaiva. V'nisla v'yoshe. When he wants to sit down, he does it in a way that the balgaiva do it. He leans on something and he sits down. V'eno tzara. Why is it that he's a kamton? He's very stingy. Because he works hard to get his money. He gathers together the money, and he doesn't want to part with it. He doesn't want to give it to others magnanimously. Not only that, it seems from Rashi that it was the minhag in those days that those people who came to him on a regular basis for Hakosas Dam would invite him to their homes in order to feed them. So therefore, he never really spent his own money. And he got into this way of life in which he holds on to his money very tightly. The Eino Ra, and therefore, when people who need Hakosas Dam don't have the money to pay, and not only that, let me go beyond that. He, so to speak, prays that people should get sick so that they'll need his services. Like, for example, the Gemara tells us in Yomi that the Kohen Gadol, when he got Lifnai V'Lifnim, he would pray, Al Tekabel Tfilos, don't accept the Tfilos of the selfish. Now, can you imagine if you produce ammunition and you sell, bombs and hand grenades and RPGs, you're praying that there'll be war, because then they'll buy all your stuff. So he's praying that there'll be cholim and there'll be clients of his. Ochel harbe, right? As we said before, many different people invite him over to feed him. So he eats by many, many different people and he gets fat. Umotzi, kima, and when he goes to the washroom, then he has very limited bowel movements. He says here, so I'm not sure. You have to be a it seems that he gives his patients a very strict diet because Hakosas Dam is so dangerous. And from that strict diet, they feed him. As we said before, they host him for meals. Choshed al arayos, because as we said before, the women need Hakosas Dam no less than the men. So he's always there with the women and he's, puncturing their veins and so forth. He's like a technician. And Choshed al geza. What does that mean? Very often he would charge a bill to a woman. She's a married woman. And for one reason or another, she doesn't want to reveal to her husband that she's going for Hakosas Dam. So what she does is she steals from her husband's money. And he's causing that. In other words, sometimes he's so eager to take out the blood of his patient that he'll kill the patient. What kind of a profession fits this description of Nikia V'Kala?